Suppose a leader is self-aware and kind of, let's say, sensitive. Now, what happens is oftentimes the managers need to give very strong feedback to their reportees, which requires them to have very difficult conversations, right? And sometimes
Yes.
they also might be giving feedback to their senior management, right, to their own managers or bosses, right?
Yeah.
And many people are very rigid in their beliefs. They are very temperamental in their nature, right? Not someone who can take feedback easily. How do
Yes.
you suggest these kind of conversations can be approached so that it doesn't cause too much stress and heartburn, and the managers can have these kind of difficult conversations with a sense of ease?
Right. So, in terms of talking to subordinates, I'll address that part because that's really significant. A lot of leaders are very uncomfortable with difficult conversations. So, I've had times when people have said, "Oh, Gulshan, please, you're the HR person and you take care of this conversation, and we need to tell him that let him go." And they have not even had a feedback conversation with him. So, I think leaders need to be very clear that feedback, difficult conversations will be needed and they need to build the skills to have them. So, first thing to do in such a case is to collect data. Which were the exact situations? What happened in that situation, and what is the impact that it had on the results? Now, supposing you're talking to someone, you can say the component that you created had too many problems, and you list out those problems and say, because of this,
Mm.
we got poor feedback from the client and we have a risk of losing the client. So you've connected the problem to the impact. Or you can say, we spend
Basically,
a lot of time waiting for you in meetings and this is going to lower our productivity. And then you gave data. Okay, these are the last 5 meetings you had. And in each one, you were there on an average, you were late by 15-20 minutes. So if you share data, then it's difficult for the person to question. And also because if you have looked at data, then you also have a strong ground on which to stand. It's not vague and this one said and so said and she said, he said, and you listen to it. So there's a principle of
what
feedback
you're
called
saying is,
fast. Sorry, go ahead.
what I understand is what you're saying is if you have the discussion based on some data, then it will not go personal and kind of the discussion will remain
Exactly.
grounded.
You're not getting personal at all. In fact, I mean, that should be the number one thing the one thing that you should never do is get
Mm-hmm.
personal. Stick to data and work related problems. I mean, just because you are from a certain part of the country and I'm from the opposite part, if you're doing that, then you're anyway not a great leader. So I'll
And yeah, good.
so I'll talk about
I think we should also cover the part where how to give feedback to the your own managers and bosses, right? How should
yeah,
that
so
be
I'll come
handled?
to that. Let me answer that first if you're saying. Do you
Mm-hmm.
manage upwards? Right? So we are covering a whole
Right.
topic of how to manage upwards because all the time we think that, we talk about our bosses and how our bosses manage us, but there is an art of
Mm-hmm.
managing upwards as well. I think the first thing in managing upwards is to realize that the boss is also a mere human being. And just as you are a human being, you have good things about you and bad things about you. Similarly, he's also got his own set of flaws. Now, I'm not talking about
Right.
toxic managers here. That's a different category. Toxic manager has to be dealt completely differently. But I'm talking of managers with the normal range of human behavior. Now, what we do is we put that person on a pedestal and our expectations are so high. You're sitting up there, so you can't make any wrong decision. You are not allowed to make a mistake. There's nothing, we just don't give him any leeway for any mistake. We are expecting
Right.
perfection from him, which is impossible. I think you have to
Okay.
go with the mindset first that this is also a human being. And yes, there are things about him that are great, that and there are things that are not all that great. And once you come from that mindset, then if there's something that you feel that you need to address with the manager, you will do it politely, just as you will give feedback downwards. I think similarly, the dignity of the other person, the politeness and the decency in the conversation, these are basic principles. They have to be maintained. Again, this cannot get personal. You can't get personal with your boss. So you might want to again collect data and say, request for a time and say, this is something I wanted to share with you. And I've observed it over this period of time. This is happening. Like I send you, for example, I submit my report to you, and it takes very long for you to revert. Now, because of that, a lot of my other work gets pending because I can't start without knowing what's the status with this particular report. And I've observed it, I have a couple of dates. These are the 3-4 dates I sent you some data and this sent you some reports and they didn't come through. Is there anything we can do about it so that I can be more productive? A lot of times the chances are that if you are respectful and you're a good worker, you have developed a good rapport with the manager, he or she will listen to you and will accept the feedback and will say, okay, I'm going to try and do this. Now, unfortunately, if you are with a manager who's full of him, I, me, myself, and has a huge fat ego and believes that he can do no wrong, in that case, you're in a lose-lose kind of situation. You're not going to able to gather much. Overall, over time, you will realize that the only thing to do here is to leave the manager. But that is a toxic manager category. In all other cases, you are likely to make some improvement by having these conversations